Hey everyone. Happy Restorative Yoga Day. We are going to work deeply into the hip flexors today. And some of that work will be um, joined by and maybe inhibited by ankle mobility or range of motion in the ankles. So I want us to check that out first. So we'll come to a seat and we'll pay attention to the ankles and what they feel like and look like in this seat. So the seat that we're going to take is called Virasana, and I'm going to turn to the side so you can see what I'm doing with my ankles. So first of all, I recommend having a prop. You can use a folded up blanket or pillow. It doesn't have to be a block. It can be any kind of prop that you can place between the ankles and then let the sits bones lean back onto it. And you can add a lot of height underneath the sits bones. So if, like, for example, this is about the range of motion of the flexion of your knee and the ankles getting flat, then add more height underneath your sits bones so that you don't have to sit down so low. Once you've got that right height underneath your sits bones for you, might not look like me, I want you to take a peek at your toes, okay, and your feet. So ideally, the toes, the heel bone, the ankle, everything is straight in one line. So my toes are not pointed out to the side, my ankle is not flexed. Okay, but my toes are pointing straight back behind me, and I'm making one line from knee joint to ankle joint to toes. Make sense? All right, now I'm going to turn and face you, and we're just going to hang out here for a moment. And eventually, the idea is that the range of motion in the ankle and the foot becomes so that the foot, the top of the foot is flat. So like all 10 toenails get to press down into your mat. And that might not happen today, and that's okay, which is why we build support underneath the sits bones. We'll do a little bit of breath work here, and then we'll get into our long holds and our deep hip lengthening poses. All right, so let's take a moment, roll the shoulders up and back, settle into your seat, maybe shift the weight back a little bit into your sits bones. You might even slightly lean back. See if you can get your shoulders to shift over the hips. You can let your palms rest face down on top of the thighs. Energetically, if you want a little bit more sense of grounding and stabilizing, palms face down. If you want a little bit more sense of lightness, willingness to receive, palms might face up towards the ceiling. So you can try both and see which one you like best. Maybe close the eyes here, or you can even just soften the gaze. And start to breathe in and out through the nose. And then we'll do our 3-part inhale and 1 long exhale. And this will all come in and out through the nose. So the 3-part inhale, you'll imagine your torso is like a vase you're going to fill up from the bottom. So that first sip of air in comes into the low belly. And second sip of air comes into the rib cage. Third sip of air, heart all the way up to the head. And then exhale it all out through the nose. Again, breathing in, low belly. Breathe in, rib cage. Breathe into the heart and the head. Exhale through the nose. Breathe in, low belly. Breathe in, rib cage. Breathe in, heart, all the way up to the head. Exhale through the nose. 2 more rounds of breath like this. Breathe in, low belly. Breathe in, rib cage. Breathe in, heart and head. Exhale through the nose. Last time here with this breath, inhale, low belly. Inhale, rib cage. Inhale, heart and head. Exhale through the nose. And throughout the rest of our practice, we'll just allow the breathing to be in and out through the nose. Let it be natural, your own rhythm of breath, your own pace. Now, if you're using a prop between the ankles, you might take that out, move it off to the side, and then walk your hands back behind your feet. Press down into the tops of the ankles, tops of the feet. Maybe lift the hips up a little bit. Just feel a little sensation on the top of that thigh and maybe into the ankles and the feet. Take one big breath in here. Big breath out. And then relax the hips. First shape we're going to make for our long hold will be a low lunge, or in the yin world is called dragon pose. And so you might want some padding for the knee that's going to be back. We're going to start with the right foot forward, so left knee will be down on the mat. You might want an extra blanket to pad that knee. And then you might want some props at the top of your mat, like a stool or a chair or a couch. I'm just going to pull my stool over. You can go ahead and grab a desk chair. Just make sure it's not going to roll away from you. And then we'll take that right foot forward. Again, pad that left knee if that knee is sensitive. Recommend starting out up on the hands, because 5 minutes is a long time to hold this, so try not to be in a rush to get too deep. And then just take a few moments, tuck those back toes under, lift that back knee, see if you can get a little bit longer through that left leg. Set the knee back down. We've been practicing in our vinyasa practices, we've been practicing this deep low lunge, and here's an opportunity to really test that range of motion. Okay, and if you're up on the hands, feel free to stay there. If you're using a stool like me, forearms might feel accessible at this point. I want you to just first notice where you're feeling sensation. There's really no right or wrong place to feel sensation. What typically happens is we feel sensation in our body, again, where tissues are tightest. And most of us spending a lot of time seated in chairs and driving, hip flexors are pretty tight. So it might be that left thigh, the top of the thigh, feels like it's being really stretched. But you might feel it somewhere else. So just notice where you're feeling things. Now this front foot, the right foot, you can play with turning the toes out to the side if you want. You can wobble a little bit side to side in this. I was teaching this particular pose at a class on earlier this week, and one of my students after class asked me, how do you, she's like, I love this pose, I like dragon pose, except for my shoulders and my hands get really tired, and I feel so good when I do it, but I can't sustain it for that long. And she was like, do you have any suggestions for that? And I said, yeah, I would do this on a stool. I would use something that's kind of like hip or chest height, so that you don't have to sustain all of that weight in your hands the whole time. So if you're really trying to get down into the floor, onto the forearms, and you don't have a lot of props underneath you, I'd make that change. I would bring height up underneath your hands and your forearms, so that the weight of the body can shift lower into the hips, and you're not trying to sustain this by holding yourself up, your body weight in your hands, which is ultimately going to transfer up into the shoulders, the neck, the jaw, all that stuff. We want to be able to sink into the hips. That is the target area of this shape. We're well over halfway through this. Hold if you want to make any changes, if you want to go deeper, if you want to back out a little bit. I always recommend returning to your breath over and over again, as many times as it takes. I say that as a reminder, as a gentle reminder that this is a practice, and we practice. My teacher always says we practice because we forget. And what do we forget? Well, sometimes we forget to breathe. Um, Sometimes we forget to practice. Sometimes we forget why we're doing the thing that we're doing. Why did you show up today in the first place? And maybe it's we forgot why we fell in love with the practice and now it feels like a chore. Or maybe it always felt like a chore. So it's just an opportunity to remember why you're doing what you're doing. You know, what is the intention behind this? Can the breath be at the forefront of that? Can it be like an anchor? Just a couple more breaths here. One last deep breath in. Deep breath out. And now we're going to shift back, and you might take some time here to shift back into a half split. You can lengthen out through that right leg. You can shift the hips back over that left knee. I like to take a little bit of time in child's pose in between sides. If you want to take something else, like just laying down on the belly, belly down Shavasana, or downward facing dog, or cat cow, we'll take about 3 to 5 breaths before we transition to our second side. So feel free to join me in child's pose if you like, or anything else that's calling to you. All right, let's come back to tabletop. We're going to transition, if we're using that blanket underneath the back knee, transition it to the right side of your mat so that right knee gets some support. We'll step that left foot forward. If you need to transition props that you're going to bring your hands onto, get that to the right height. And again, I recommend starting off shallow in a shape like this. And so by shallow, I mean don't go to your fullest expression of the posture right away. Back it off. Let your hips kind of like slowly settle, slowly melt. Let them, those hip flexors, tell you when they're ready to go deeper. And then just notice the back knee, like if most of the weight's resting on that back knee, it might help to pick up the knee and wiggle that foot back. See if you can get on more like the insertion point of the quadricep muscle into the knee joint. So you're not on the knee joint itself, but you're a little bit more forward of it. If that doesn't feel possible, again, just padding that knee, blankets, pillows, pad that knee as much as needed. And then you might spend a little bit of time playing with the rotation of that front left foot. You can turn it out to the side. You can wobble a little bit side to side. Whenever we're doing deep hip work like this, I always like to remind us to pay attention to where the tension is in the body. It's really normal for it to creep up into the shoulders, the neck, the jaw, the fingertips. Oftentimes I'll look around the room if I'm in the room teaching this in person, I'll see people kind of like white knuckling it, like they're like death grip in their hands and there's so much tension there. If you can relax those ancillary body parts, soften into this, allow that sensation to be in the hips, in the lower body, breathing through it. That's where that release comes from. But you really have to support yourself appropriately. So you have to have the right level of height underneath your forearms, your elbows, your chest, so that you're not having to hold your body weight up with your upper body. Hit our halfway point here. I'm just taking some time to assess if you want to make any changes in your shape, if you want to add props or take props away. Keep returning to the breath over and over again. And always noticing, I won't say always, I'll say when you remember to check in with the breath, can you also notice the quality of the breath? And by that I mean, what does it sound like? Is the breath really loud? Is it forced? Are you breathing in and out through your nose? Are you breathing all the way down into the rib cage, into the belly? Is it slow? Is it quick? So that's what I mean about quality of breath. Take about 2 more deep belly breaths here in this shape. And then we'll back out. So you might take that moment through half split to shift the hips back over the right knee, lengthening out through the left leg. You can take a few moments in child's pose, cat and cow, or even downward facing dog if you want. And then we'll set up for our next shape. So remember that prep work we did at the beginning of our practice where we took a peek at our toes and our ankles and we kind of checked out the range of motion and the alignment? That's going to come in to play here. And so we'll take half hero's pose or Ardha Virasana in Sanskrit. There's a lot of different ways you can use props to support this. So what I'm looking for here, I'm going to move what I'm looking for here, again, we'll start with this right knee bent, okay? So top of the ankle, see if you can get that flat. If it's not flat, no big deal. What you're gonna do is you're gonna add the props underneath your left hip. So extend your left leg forward and see if you can sit down inside of your right ankle. And if that right ankle does some weird stuff, it doesn't get flat, the toes wanna turn out to the side, you lift up by adding props underneath your left hip, okay, left sits bone. So right now I have a blanket underneath my left sits bone. That's allowing both my sits bones to align evenly without forcing too much flexion into my right knee. Now it might be that you need to stay in an upright seat here. And that's absolutely okay because we got to work with the range of motion in the ankle first before we take this deeper. Now, if you're very comfortable here, your ankle's not giving you any pain, your knee joint isn't giving you any pain, you might lean back and maybe you have a couch behind you can lean on or that chair that you're using, you can lean back on it. There are some of you yogis out there watching this that might be able to lay all the way back down onto your back without any props underneath your spine. If that's you, great, go for it. That is not me. I need support underneath my spine. So that can look like this. I'm just leaning back on my stool. Could have a couch cushion here. If you have bolsters and pillows and stuff like that at home, you can do the same thing. You can build that ramp behind you, that little yogi recliner. So you just get creative with your props. What do you have around you? Ooh, hope I didn't knock my plant over. Okay, it's still standing. So take a few moments, kind of wiggle yourself into this. Get the props set up correctly. Find a place where you can eventually become still. So deep, deep, deep flexion in your right knee. Range of motion in your right ankle being tested. You're seeing where that's at. And then if you're laying back, this can be kind of nice on the chest. You can spread the arms wide. Be a little bit of a heart opener even. Might feel a little bit like a back bend too, because if you're laying all the way back, in essence, you are layering on a back bend. All right, so we're going to be here for about 1 more minute. Do your best to continue to breathe deeply in and out through your nose, whatever your shape looks like. Let go of this idea of ideal or perfect shape. That does not exist. We all have our own unique skeletal structures, range of motion in our own bodies, and maybe injuries or limitations we've acquired throughout life just by virtue of being a human being. Things happen. Take one more breath wherever you are. If you're laying all the way on your back, sit up, take your time with that. Go slow on your exit. I want you to roll all your weight to your left hip so that when you extend your right leg forward, there's no weight on that right leg. So all the weight on that left hip, then free your right leg forward. Take a moment here to lay on back, pause, both legs extended forward. We're just gonna pause in between sides. Let's take 3 breaths here. Noticing any new sensation in that right leg, the hip, the knee, the ankle. One more breath. If you're laying back, we'll sit up and we'll set up our second side. So this time we're gonna bend that left knee. Take a look at the left toes. See that they're pointing straight back behind you. If they're not, and if the ankle is not flat on the mat, then this is when you add height underneath your right sits bone. So I add as much height as I need underneath my right sits bone. And I've had students in classes, they've got at least a couple of blocks stacked underneath this right hip, and they're really sitting up nice and high because they're working with the range of motion of the ankle first. Remember, that's the key. We work with the ancillary, that opens up, and then we add on. Okay, so we're not trying to put the cart before the horse. Work with your body as it is today. Maybe you're staying in an upright seat. Maybe this side allows you to lay on back. Maybe you're just leaning back into your couch cushion or your chair with your elbows and your forearms. That's a great place to work too. if you're not sure about things like this, if you're like, I'm not sure, I don't know if I'm ready to go back. Another reason why I love the breath is because it's such a great indicator of what the body is willing to tolerate. So if the breathing becomes really fast and shallow, and it's kind of almost like it sounds like a Lamaze breath, like or hyperventilation, your body's telling you fight or flight, flee, get out of there. You're not having the desired effect on the nervous system. Okay, so that's just an indication that you probably want to add more props back out of the shape. Be a little bit more kind and gentle, patient with your body. And the knee joint and the ankles, gosh, these things, these body parts, when they get injured, it takes a long time to heal because these joints don't have as much blood flow as like muscle tissue does. So it takes longer for them to heal because what heals tissues is more blood flow to those tissues. I mean, that's one aspect of healing. Um, and so we don't have a lot of blood flow through a joint like the knee and the ankle. It just takes longer. So part of learning to be wise with the body is learning to be patient with the body. And that's very much an advanced yoga practice. About a minute left here. Take 2 more breaths where you are. If you're all the way down on your back, start to sit up. Take your time. Before you extend that left leg forward, lean all the weight onto the right hip. There's no weight on that left leg as you extend it. And then both legs are just stretched straight out in front of you. Now from here, we're going to settle into Shavasana. And on the way to Shavasana, if you want to grab any extra props, or if you want to spend some time in Happy Baby, or take your legs up the wall, feel free to do that. I'm going to give us a 2-minute timer for Shavasana. And I really hope you take the time to just let everything kind of integrate, because there's like this, when we release out of shapes after long holds, there's this echo, there's this residue of sensation, but you have to slow down and be still to feel that. So take the time to notice how you feel as you settle into your Shavasana. Relax the shoulders, close the eyes, deep breath in through the nose. Open your mouth, exhale the air out. Let it go, let it rest. Shavasana. Slowly start to bring your awareness back to this body, back to this breath. Gentle movement to fingertips and toes. Move the head side to side. Big stretch, arms reach overhead. Breathe into the length of the body. And then on an exhale, roll off to a side and make your way back up to that upright seat. It could be the same way you started your practice. You can notice if it feels any different to sit like that now. You can also just sit cross-legged if you'd prefer. And we'll just take three breaths, Viloma breath, 3-part inhale, 1 exhale. Maybe take the hands to the belly and the rib cage. Start to breathe in low belly. Breathe in rib cage. Breathe in heart and head. Exhale through the nose. Breathe in belly, rib cage, heart, head. Exhale through the nose. And last time, breathe in belly, rib cage, heart and head. Exhale through the nose, let it go. If you'd like to, you can bring your hands together at the heart and bow the chin into the chest, just taking a moment to honor your practice with reverence and gratitude. May you use the fruits of this practice to serve your highest good. May you share it with those around you that you love and who could use healing. May we remember to send love and healing to all sentient beings around the world. May they be happy. May they be free. Namaste, yogis. Hope you enjoyed your practice. Thank you so much for being with me today. Please take care of yourselves and come back again soon.